First, about how God created us male and female. And there is a whole lot we could get into with this. My viewpoint's heavily skewed, as you might imagine, to the psychological. So I'm going to spend a fair amount of time talking about that. I'm also going to talk about physical differences and the roles that we were each created to fulfill. And then, of course, my husband, as I mentioned, is going to talk some about the rule, since this is an oblate retreat. So we'll start with some basic biology. To quote Matt Walsh, what is a woman? For that matter, what is a man? I don't know if any of you are familiar with this book. Dr. Abby Favale is a professor at Notre Dame. Until recently, she was at Oregon's own George Fox University. She wrote this book, and it is a great book. Gender studies are kind of her niche. She was an absolute answer to prayer for this diocese, for Archbishop Sample, when he was putting together his statement on gender issues for the Archdiocese. She basically wrote it. I mean, this is her thing. And she has a fascinating story. She came into the world in Idaho, actually, was born into a very conservative evangelical family. And she rebelled as she got older from the faith and became a die-hard feminist and went into philosophy. I mean, she's an academic. And, so, I mean, as much as she was embracing this very, very, very secular worldview, she could still speak Christian. And so she ended up getting a job at George Fox. And she was sort of pretending to be Christian, but really on the inside, she was kind of subverting her students' faith. She was, you think about as a parent, you send your child to a Christian school thinking, and then meanwhile, professors like that are, undermining it. But she had a profound conversion experience to traditional Orthodox Catholicism. And anyway, now that she is Christian, Catholic, she still speaks feminist. And so she is in a unique position to help us all understand each other, to help clarify where the breakdown is, like where this came from. So someone, I can't remember who had spoken to me at some point over the past couple of days about the transgender thing, but this is a great book to help explain. It'll explain the whole thing to you, where it came from, exactly where the breakdown is. It's just profound. So one of the things that I found especially valuable in this book is that answer to what is a woman, because I was always thinking in terms of chromosomes. But she actually points out that in biology, the maleness or the femaleness of an organism that reproduces sexually is not just determined by the chromosome, it's actually determined by the gamete. So there are some men who have two X chromosomes in addition to a Y chromosome. There are some women who lack two X chromosomes. But what really makes the difference is the size of the gamete, the size of the sex cell that a male or a female organism makes in order to those combine to become a new being. So in humans, we have 46 chromosomes. And when we reproduce, women make eggs in our ovaries and men make sperm in their testes. And you put the two together, each one of those cells has half a set of chromosomes. So each one has 23. They combine together to make a brand new, unique organism that has the full set of 46. So the female contributes an egg, the male contributes the sperm. And then, of course, as Catholics, we believe that the soul then is present from the moment of that combination, from the moment of that conception. Well, in every species that reproduces sexually, one sex has larger gametes, larger reproductive cells. That would be the egg. Look at the big circle. That's the egg. It's huge. One sex has smaller ones, the sperm, the little tiny things. And so whoever has the larger gamete is the female. The way this works is when they combine, the egg, the female part, receives the sperm, the male part, which is essentially obliterated in the process. And then the egg, the mass of the egg is food. It basically nurtures the organism in those first few cell divisions until it gets a little bit bigger, and then there's other ways it gets fed. So yeah, the reason the egg is big is because it feeds the new organism. So you see the sex difference from the absolute first instant of existence. The egg is just like a mom. She travels with snacks. Men travel light, and they trust women to feed them, right? I mean, it's kind of a stereotype, but it's actually sort of true at the cellular level. So as Catholics, we believe that being male and female is reflected throughout our body-soul composite at every level. In the Catechism, it's paragraph 2332, it says, "Sexuality affects all aspects of the human person in the unity of his body and soul." I should have put it on a slide, but I didn't. So that was paragraph 2332. So we're one or the other. And there are psychological and spiritual, as well as physical, qualities of maleness and femaleness. Now, any quality of our body and soul is going to be present in degrees. So you'll see men who are more or less typically masculine, and you'll see women who are more or less typically feminine, just like there are degrees of skin tone and height and intelligence and creativity and anything else. But in essence, male is different from female. So how women do a thing is different from how men do a thing, even if it's the same thing. And it appears that they're doing it the same way, it's still different because we're different. And the fact that God designed us this way indicates that he had different intentions for what we would normally do. And this is the basis for classic gender roles, although it's not a justification for requiring strict adherence to those in the absence of charity or common sense. Because again, there are degrees and there are all kinds of situations that we find ourselves in. Everyone's different, every family's different. But more often than not, the classic roles tend to fit better than they don't. So I did not come prepared to talk about the transgender phenomenon, so I will just make a brief comment here, and I will leave that to Dr. Favali. But I just want to say that, for a variety of reasons, our human lives commonly depart from the ideal. There's plan A, how everything is designed. Plan A for our lives is where a loved and anticipated soul is born into a two-parent home, baptized as an infant. There's no trauma, no poverty. Everybody goes to church. That's plan A. And then there's plan LMNOP that most of us are living. So there will sometimes be souls who develop a psychology that is at variance with their ontology. And this is a particular cross, to be sure, because that person is going to have to figure out how to live with that variance, what's now called gender dysphoria. If they choose to alter their physical bodies so that they externally match what they feel like inside, they're going to have to suffer the inevitable negative consequences of that, which are pretty extreme, physically and psychologically and spiritually. I mean, there are consequences to violating the natural law. If you drive on the wrong side of the street, you're going to get hit. If you put Diet Coke in your gas tank instead of gasoline, your car's not going to run. So we have to recognize the woundedness and respond in charity. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. So back to plan A, or close to it. So we all recognize, at least all of us here recognize, that men's bodies generally have greater physical abilities. They can run faster, they can jump higher, They can open jars when we can't. Men are designed to take initiative, to build, to go out and hunt, and also to sacrifice themselves in a particular way. Think about Christ and the male priesthood. Male sacrifice is foreshadowed even in conception, as I just said about the sperm. When he enters the egg, what he was before disappears completely. So in a sense, he sacrifices himself entirely for that new life, just as Christ gave himself for the church. Men are designed to be fathers, and fathers provide and protect, spiritually as well as physically. These qualities of fatherhood can be present in every relationship a man has, regardless of whether he actually fathers his own children or participates in raising someone else's. The qualities of fatherhood go along with being a man, period. Women are ordered to receive and nurture. A woman's physical body, starting with that very first egg cell, is receptive, and so is her soul. And women nurture, again, from that very first cell. They feed people physically and spiritually. And in doing so, they also sacrifice. They give of themselves completely too. But it's different from the way men do it. Just as Mary's experience of the cross was different from Jesus. So again, men and women, they may be doing the same things, but they do them differently because they're different. And so the qualities of motherhood can be present in every relationship a woman has, whether she bears children of her own or participates in raising someone else's, or neither. Motherhood goes along with being a woman, period. So now I want to talk about psychology, because this is the fun stuff for me. This is a book that I will admit I have not read. I just love the title so much. I almost don't need to read it. I know what's in it, but the title, yeah, men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti. The idea is that men have the ability naturally to compartmentalize. Like a waffle has all these little squares. So in a man's brain, and this is a generalization, of course, but it's true more often than not, men typically operate out of one square at a time. And so when one square is open, the other are closed. This permits men to focus on a task in front of them in relative isolation. It allows them to concentrate. It allows them to go to Costco and only buy one or two things on a list. This is a superpower that women lack. Okay? Women are like spaghetti. We do not see any situation or any relationship in isolation. All the noodles touch all the other noodles on the plate at the same time. We walk through Costco and get one or two things we went there for, but on the way, we see all the samples and all the new things and all the coupons, all the things on sale. We think, oh, my husband needs this and my son loves this, and I just remembered we're having a party this weekend, I should get this, and we're almost out of this, and then 10 minutes later, your cart is overflowing despite the fact that you swore you were only gonna get one or two things and be able to go through the self-checkout this time. So these are natural qualities that are gifts that go along with being male or female. But as with everything, virtue is in the mean. And there's disorder at both extremes. So let's talk about that. Adam was given dominion over all living creatures. And so God equipped him physically and psychologically to provide and protect creation. That's dominion. Dominion is different than domination. Any kind of strength taken too far, when you impose your will over God's or over other creatures in a disordered way, that's domination. That's not good. Neither is the other extreme, which is hiding from responsibility, not taking care of things, not protecting or providing. So women do this too, but again, women do it differently. There are also disordered extremes to receiving and nurturing that women do. Some women are not particularly receptive to life or to other people. And at the other end, it's one thing to receive, but it's another thing to grab and to grasp and to take before a thing is given. That would be disordered receiving. And likewise with nurturing, on one end of that spectrum is neglect, and on the other end is smothering. So women can fall into their own form of domination by trying to impose our will above God's or above other people's. Whereas for men, this most often takes the form of aggression. For women, it's usually through subversion and manipulation. We'll be talking about this more, I think, tomorrow morning. But for now, let's talk more about women. So because of how God made us, women will often see needs or opportunities present themselves before men do, because we're not waffles. All our compartments are open 24/7. And this makes us as women uniquely able to take care of others, to perceive their needs and to anticipate problems and head them off. And this is normally a gift. It's normally a good thing. But it also means we are uniquely susceptible to anxiety, to worry, because how easy is it to get lost in all those things we see coming? Most men are able to be like, well, that's not something I need to worry about right now. Back to the task at hand. We have a much harder time doing that. We can so easily get consumed by worry, and it can drive us right into usurping our husband's authority and trying to dominate him out of fear, not out of malice, but it's still not good. So being perceptive in this way makes women natural worriers, but we're also natural intercessors. So we'll talk more about that when we talk about intercession. But back to men. Other than making it through Costco in record time, what's the advantage of being a waffle? Well, they tend not to borrow trouble, if you know what I mean by that. Men react rather than plan, most typically. There are many men out there who do plan, but generally speaking, men are more likely to wait until something becomes an actual problem rather than just a possible one before they spring into action. The advantage of this is that it conserves resources. You don't waste your time and effort on things that haven't happened yet, and you especially don't waste your energy worrying about all the what ifs. You wait until there's a little more data and an actual situation to respond to. The danger in this approach, though, is that if you get too deep into standby mode, it's like when your phone or your computer goes to sleep after nothing's happened for a couple of minutes, you might have trouble waking up when you need to. And this leads to a classic male-female dynamic that I would say is at the root of the vast majority of the marriage problems that I see in my practice. The man gets stuck in standby mode, and the woman runs so anxious that she takes over his role in the family, so there's no need for him to wake up. She's doing everything. He feels useless. This is more or less what happened in the garden. Remember, we talked about this. Garden of Eden was a huge place, one tree that Adam and Eve were asked to avoid, but Eve went over there and Adam followed along. Eve's sin began as she allowed herself to consider the tree, and in this, her desires began to depart from the will of God. Yesterday, I shared Father Ripperger's insight that this was the moment where parts were born, where her cogitative power began to fragment because of that split between her will and God's. We also talked about the fact that curiosity is a vice, not a virtue. And in this case, curiosity not only enabled Eve's desires to depart from God's will, it pulled Eve out of vocation, out from under the protection that her husband would have provided. it appears in the Genesis account that she was acting independently from Adam, even though he was there with her. There's no indication he realized what was going on or what she was about to do. He was in sleep mode. Meanwhile, Eve's approaching the tree so she herself can see what's the deal with this thing. I can imagine what might have been going on in her head. So this is the tree. It really doesn't look that different from all the other trees here, does it? I mean, I wonder what God was up to. I wonder why he told us not to eat from it. Maybe it's poisonous. If it's that bad, we should probably get a fence built around it because we're going to have kids before too long and they could really get into trouble unless we do something to protect them. I better make sure that happens. So I'm completely making this up, but it sounds plausible, right? I mean, this is how we will take off on something like this and justify to ourselves getting independently involved in something that is outside our lane. Remember, men protect and provide. And so protecting the family is Adam's department. But the two of them are meant to work as a team. Adam was created first, and Eve was taken from his side. And Genesis says she was created to be his helper. So she is his equal in dignity. But God gave primary responsibility, dominion, to Adam before Eve was even created. He is the head, the same way that Christ is the head of the church. And women will chafe at this natural order, but Father Ripperger likes to point out that it actually works to their benefit because men can't get off the hook for anything. Even those roles traditionally assigned to women, household chores, dirty diapers, raising children, any of it, the buck stops with Adam. He's ultimately responsible. He was given dominion. She's just there to help. So if Eve was concerned about the tree and thought something needed to happen in order to keep the family safe, ideally she would have shared that with Adam before she went and did anything on her own. So remember, women, spaghetti brain, naturally perceptive, so we will sometimes see danger coming before men do, but men may be the better judge of whether or not something actually needs to be worried about and dealt with at that time and in that manner. Too often, these natural differences of ours, which should be complementary, only lead us to fight as if we're not on the same team. We're supposed to be on the same team. And in the story of the fall, as we know, Eve usurped Adam's role and he vacated his. And so the sin of Adam, the sin of Eve, results in the curse of Adam and the curse of Eve, which plays out again and again in our lives as a result of original sin. But thankfully, that's not the end of the story. So now let's talk about the new Adam and the new Eve. So the new Adam, of course, is Christ, and the new Eve is his mother, Mary. And Mary shows us from the moment of the Annunciation, the perfection of being female. She was receptive psychologically with no compartments closed. She was receptive physically, able to receive new life in the womb. And so Mary receives the Archangel Gabriel's message with her whole being. She asks a question, how can this be? Meaning, since I'm not doing the things most people do that cause them to be pregnant. But from the angel's response, we can tell that this was a simple question asked in faith and wonder, not out of skepticism or distrust. And then she gave her yes, her fiat, may it be done to me according to your word. In Mary, there is no desire whatsoever that departs from the will of God. She had no parts. So now the infant Jesus is growing in the womb of Mary, his mother, who nurtures him as women are meant to do. And for those 9 months, his life is her life. His experiences are her experiences. What he eats is what she just ate. All her joys and sorrows become his joys and sorrows, transmitted to him by chemical mediators in her bloodstream, endorphins, and all the rest. This is the profound bond of a mother and child. This is why the Mother of God had to be perfect had to be a virgin. She had to be completely pure in order to contain the Son of God, the creator of the universe made flesh. So Mary continued to nurture as long as God willed it, and then she released her son out into the world to do what he came for. She stayed nearby. She could be as involved as he wanted her to be, but she didn't control. She didn't subvert. She didn't manipulate. It is really important to recognize the influence that all mothers have on their children from the get-go. A baby learns from its mother, even before birth, about who its father is. When he hears his father's voice from inside the womb, he experiences his mother's reaction to that voice, and he associates the two. Is she happy to see his father? Do they speak lovingly to each other? Is she relaxed and happy when he embraces her? All of that is transmitted to the child through movements and sounds, but also through chemicals in her bloodstream. On the other hand, are voices raised and angry? Are muscles tense? Are the chemical mediators coming through the placenta not happy ones like endorphins and oxytocin that make the baby feel calm and safe, but hormones of fear like adrenaline? So in this way, the relationship the baby has with its father has begun to form even before the child is born. And not just the relationship with the father. A baby learns about everything in its mother's life in utero in this way, including himself. Is a woman happy to be pregnant, or is she terrified? Does she distance herself from her unborn child as soon as she finds out she's pregnant because she's bracing herself for the moment when she'll have to give that child away to be raised by another? The child experiences that. He experiences his mother's reactions to music and other noises that she likes and dislikes, food she likes and dislikes, activities she likes and dislikes, and by the effects these have on her. When the mother prays, the baby prays. The baby learns the sounds and rhythms of worship if the mother attends Mass, and this starts to form its relationship with God. And this all continues after the child is born. In Plan A, and again, many of us have lived something else, but in Plan A, when a child is very young, the mother normally continues to have the primary role in its life. And as it grows, the father then takes on more and more importance, to the point that preparing the child to go out into the world is ideally primarily the role of the father. We women tend to want to keep our kids too safe, too close, too well fed. That's completely appropriate when kids are helpless infants. But men are normally a lot better at equipping their kids to deal with the outside world, to be responsible for themselves, and that's totally appropriate when they're a little older, especially as teenagers, less so when they're infants. So again, Plan A generalizations rooted in how we were designed to function and modeled by the Holy Family. There are even interesting differences, physical differences in the brains between men and women. For example, how they respond to sound. How much sound they can respond to, whether they can monitor multiple channels at once. Most women are naturally better at paying attention to a room full of chaotic children, whereas men tend to become more quickly overwhelmed by that. Women have a natural neurological inclination to talk and be talked to much more than men do. God designed us this way because for small children, it is crucial that they be talked to constantly. Their normal brain development depends on it. And women are perfect for this. Men invented noise-canceling headphones and man caves. I want to talk a bit more about family life. Again, as a baby grows and develops, it normally takes its cue from its mother about most things, and particularly about who its father is, how important he is, how to treat him, and what to expect from him. Does a mother talk about her husband with love when he's away? The children will hear this. Does a mother hold her baby up to the window in excitement when its father is coming home? Do children see their mother taking care to prepare special meals or wash clothes their dad needs? And if a father's having a bad day and gets a little testy with the kids, or a lot testy, the mother's reaction to all this makes an enormous difference. Children will learn from their mother whether they should love their father or if they should fear him. They learn from their mother whether to respect their father's authority or if this is actually optional. We pretend we do when he's around, but when he's gone, it's not the same. They will also learn from their father about having respect for their mother, but this normally happens a little later. Again, the mother's connection with the child, her role in his life is primary for those first few years, and then the father's role gradually takes on more importance. And the father's role is of absolutely crucial importance, spiritually, psychologically, physically, in all ways. In our world today, we are seeing directly the damage that gets done when children don't grow up with fathers in the home. And very importantly, as the faith of the father goes, so goes the faith of the children. Research indicates that children's chosen religious practice as adults most often follows the practice of the father, not the mother, something like 90% of the time. So it's great if the mom is taking the kids to Mass, even if dad doesn't go. But if dad never goes to Mass, the children are not likely to keep going once the mom stops taking them. Not only that, but for most of us, our relationship with our earthly father is typically the template from which we form our adult relationship with our heavenly father. Our heavenly father is perfect, no human father is, and we will tend to project our experience of our earthly father, whatever that was, onto our heavenly one. So if dad was absent in some way, if he worked really long hours, if he pretty much just came home to sleep, if he was in a bad mood all the time, if he never said, "I love you," that child will grow up and have a hard time picturing a heavenly father who loves you so much that he can count every hair on your head. We all have to overcome some degree of this because no father was perfect. Even if the Heavenly Father is saying, "I love you" loud and clear through the church or through events in that grown-up child's life, frequently the message gets missed. The children become cynical and say, "Oh, religion is just therapeutic lies, and those blessings, those are random events. It's chance. It's not God." The father would love more than anything to tell that grown-up child directly in prayer, even audibly, "I love you." But that grown-up child isn't likely to pray. As I said before, the mother can play a big role in the child understanding its earthly father as loving, even if he struggles to show it. If he works long hours, the mother can tell the children, "Oh, your father works so hard for you. He loves you so much." That can certainly help, but it's always best if both parents are, working together to model and develop their children's faith. So we'll talk some more about this tomorrow morning in the last talk about the flow of grace, but this dynamic, the role of each parent in the family, is of massive importance, not just for psychological development and the understanding of faith, but also in the realm of spiritual warfare. The grace that flows through the family is one of the main reasons the family today, as well as male and female identities themselves, are under such attack. I will say, so this is our family. This picture was taken at the cathedral downtown in it was our 25th wedding anniversary. So Bishop Peter gave us a special blessing. As I've been involved in some liberation cases with Father Ripperger in particular, one of the standard pieces of advice he will give to a family that's undergoing his liberation protocol is to run their home like a monastery. So he wants them to observe, he wants them to order their life to prayer, he wants them to observe regular hours of prayer, and the father becomes the abbot. So with that, I would like to introduce you to my abbot, my husband Jim, to talk to you about the rule of St. Benedict.
I have to say, I feel a little silly being up here after having met so many of you. So I hope you humor me with what I try to impart. But I certainly realize there's plenty of wisdom in this room. And this little talk is focused more to the younger families. So maybe you can pick up a piece to share with your kids or something. Okay. Rule of St. Benedict for the family. Let's start by looking at the role of the father. The words of our Father Benedict speaks concerning good abbots can be applied directly to the father as the head of the household. The father bears the grave responsibility of being the primary representation of both Christ and of God the Father to his wife and family. As Christ did, he daily sacrifices his own will in favor of whatever best serves his family. Like God the Father, he participates with his wife in the creation of children. He further projects God's loving fatherhood in the merciful love he manifests to each member of his family. The earthly father, like an abbot, must shepherd his flock. He must be attentive to those entrusted to him. He must keep vigilant watch over the fields, aware of the beastly desires of predators. He must foster relationships with his flock in such a way that each one feels safe, knowing that the Father has the best interest in his mind. A thoughtful shepherd will know each of his individual sheep well. When one acts in an unusual way, the Father will know something is wrong and seek to remedy the afflicted youth through the use of argument, appeal, and reproof. St. Benedict instructs us to call the whole community together whenever a decision needs to be made. It is important to come together as a family to discuss certain less weighty issues. This will give the younger children a chance to grow, and they should come out of it with an experience of being heard and understood. However, I do not believe it is always prudent to involve the entire family to make decisions in this way. For many situations in family life, the decision is best left to the parents alone. Yet, as children age, a parent should seek a kind of counsel from them. It is important as children grow into a young adulthood, that they be able to think rationally and express themselves maturely. Children must not think too highly of their opinion, or they can become proud. At the same time, it is true that children, particularly teens, may have gifts their parents lack. These gifts from God should be honored and not spurned. Finally, it is of great importance that husband and wife come together often to discuss events concerning the family. Neither parent should ever find themselves in the dark regarding important family matters. St. Benedict teaches us it is more important to lead by example than by words. This certainly appears to be true for us in the role of a parent. Does any knife cut as deep as seeing your child imitate your sinful behavior? Parents must be on guard to model the virtuous life we want our children to attain. We must ask ourselves, do we keep Christ at the center of our existence? How often do we attend Mass? Do we make excuses to skip our Sunday obligation? Do we pray together as a family? Do our children see the importance of prayer in our life? Or are we too spiritually feeble to even pray a blessing before meals when we are in public? How do we speak about others in front of our children? St. Benedict warns us, guard your lips from harmful speech or deceptive speech. A parent, especially the father, should set an example of how to discipline the body. He must not become an example of sloth. Our family has found great benefit in practicing the examination of conscience before bed. My wife has taught each of our children the spiritual exercise. This practice is often associated with St. Ignatius of Loyola, but do remember it was St. Benedict who first told us, every day with tears and sighs confess your past sins to God in prayer and change from these evil ways in the future. In today's world, many, if not all, rules of modern life go radically against the norms set by our progressive society. The matter of obedience will certainly be the cause of consternation to many in our culture. Our good Father Benedict makes clear the importance of obedience in monastic life, and this does not end at the walls of the monastery. Our children's physical and spiritual safety relies upon it. A mother of a toddler may have instructed her child to not go into the street, but woe to the mother who would let her guard down and trust the unfailing reception of such instruction to her little one. The same principles apply to the spiritual life. A parent may instruct a child on spiritual protection, but also know better than to trust that lesson to be reverently followed at all times. For this very reason, a parent must strive to attune themselves to the spiritual world and learn to read the subtle changes in the weather of your household and respond accordingly. Another way the rule radically opposes our modern culture is with its teaching on silence and the restraint of speech. How many youth or adults, for that matter, take the opportunity to hear the voice of God? Without silence, how can we know ourselves, let alone know God? It is most highly recommended that after a certain time in the evening, preferably earlier rather than later, a technological silence be observed. This means no television, computer, iPad, or iPhone. You'll find this discipline also helps with your family's sleep hygiene. As for restraint of speech, you may find this to go firmly against your beliefs. You may be under the opinion that children should be free to express themselves verbally. There is a time and place for this. St. Benedict teaches us that speaking and teaching are the master's task. The disciple is to be silent and listen. A child should first learn self-discipline, patience, and humility before freely speaking in public. I believe a way to foster humility within your child while at the same time opening your child's heart to the loving mercy of God is to institute a policy that may come to you, that they may come to you to admit a transgression without the threat of punishment. Poor choices and actions usually carry their own punishment and hardships, and it is not necessary to add to that. Instead, offer your loving guidance. The fruits of your mercy will be plentiful. Much of the rule deals with the liturgical hours. While it is not likely many of us will be able to keep the holy hours as a family, it does not mean that our Holy Father Benedict does not have anything to teach us here. It seems to me that one of the main benefits of keeping the liturgical hours is the deliberate turning of one's gaze to the Most Holy Trinity. There are a plethora of ways to do this within family life. One should foster a morning offering, prayers before meals, the family rosary, and a nightly examen, just to name a few. What better way to focus and honor God than to go to daily Mass? Even if the circumstances do not permit daily Mass attendance, you should at least be able to pray the Compline nightly as a family. Remember always the adage, the family that prays together stays together. Children should find joy in serving one another. St. Benedict instructs us that service increases reward and fosters love. Let those who are not strong have help so that they may serve without distress. If you've read the rule, you certainly have noticed that grumbling is not tolerated. At the same time, though, St. Benedict realizes individual weaknesses. For example, the rule allows 2 choices of cooked food to be made available in the monastery. You may not choose to go to this extent with your family, but offering one easy alternative for a picky eater would be within keeping the rule. We are warned about overindulgence and idleness. Time is to be made for both manual labor and prayer and reading. Let me add one quick word regarding stability, the second of the 3 vows the Benedictine monk makes. Libraries could be filled with writings concerning the importance of stability, providing guidance to the children. The value to children being raised on the foundation of a loving, secure marriage cannot be overstated. I feel that it is the stability of mother and father in a faithful relationship that makes for the best shield from all the slings and arrows that are being flung at the Christian family in our world today. Let us end this exploration with one of the most engaging chapters in the rule, the reception of guests. Holy Benedict enlightens us. All guests who present themselves are to be welcomed as Christ, for he himself will say, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Proper honor should be shown to all. What a wonderful way to model God's love for all humanity. I hope that you'll be able to find ways to take the eternal wisdom from St. Benedict and share it with your family so that you may grow closer to your family and God. Thank you.